it's really interesting to hear sort of that thought process that someone might go through, like when they're elected, like they start off, like you said, as someone who's like very strong morals or they're very passionate about something they believe in, but series of events might happen and then all of a sudden, like they're changing their perspective and they're changing their mind. And I guess the question that comes from that is obviously you having been a part of the parliament for many years and, seeing firsthand what you just described of, people like changing their behaviors because of, I guess, the different lifestyle that, being an authority has granted them. What would you sort of, how would you give advice to maybe some kids in my generation or younger who are interested in entering, the political field?
Oh, look, for starters, I would encourage them to do so. And even though I've spoken about how I'm glad to be out of it now, the fact of the matter is I'm a better person for having had that experience and understanding how the system works.
Mm.
Secondly, the more diverse people are that we get into politics, the more varied the opinions are, the more varied the outlook is, and the more inclusive it is for people not only here in Australia but also worldwide, because what we do here in Australia does affect the rest of the world, and what happens in the rest of the world does affect us as well. And so for that reason, it's most important that we have people from all different walks of life, all different genders, all different different points of view on so many things, from sexuality through to their through to their many and varied views on religion and so many different things, but working together for humanity, for humanity. And this is it. At the end of the day, I think that we all need to know and understand it doesn't matter which corner of the globe any of us come from, doesn't matter what language anybody speaks. One of the things I've experienced from running the corners of the globe that I have is that human beings are the same worldwide. They just want to live to their potential, and they want their children, their families to do the same. And they want to give them the opportunities to do that. And in some cases, that means simply getting an education. In some places, that means just getting electricity on so that they can get a book to read or read a book or learn to read. So it's about those sorts of basic things, but it's most important to live a life experience and to be able to get out there. So for those young students that are thinking about getting into politics, I would absolutely encourage them to do that. I'd also absolutely encourage them to know and understand this, that often our points of view change almost in decade cycles. So what happens is the world is continuously changing and evolving. So the things that are important to this generation here today weren't as important to the same generation 50 years ago or 40 years ago or 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. The world is changing at such a rapid pace. So, the new politicians that are going in might be contemplating things like, for me, we were contemplating the big issues were things like stem cell research and the dilemma around was that the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, et cetera, et cetera. For your generation, it may be, should we inhabit another planet? Should we expand into other planets, and should we start to mine other planets so that we can have these resources back here in Australia? Or is there life on other planets? And if there is, how are we going to address that? Are we going to learn from the mistakes that we've made from our warmongering in the past, from country to country and going and invading countries, as opposed to going and living with other countries or other worlds or other planets or other people? And so, it sounds science fiction, but believe me, many of the things that I saw as science fiction when I was a kid are actually happening now. And so, nobody would have believed that you could use a remote control to turn off and on a TV or a computer, or that you would have Wi-Fi that you could speak to and it would turn the lights on in your house or turn them off again. or that you would have a car that doesn't need a driver.
Mm.
Yeah, and yet all your generation is taking all of this stuff in its stride and not only growing with it, but looking at how they can improve on that again. So it's most important to know and understand that the thought patterns that we have now in this decade may change a little bit later on down the track. So you always have to have an open mind and not get too fixed on certain things. But if you hang on to humanity, that's one constant value that will lead us through on into generations to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really a very valid point that I think a lot of people, including myself, were previously guilty of, really sort of wanting to stick to your perspective and like hold on to it because you almost feel like wrong if you sort of change your mind about something that you had previously believed very strongly in. But I think it's really important for everyone to understand like you can believe very strongly in something and then change your mind after you've learned another perspective, and that doesn't make you wrong or like a different person. It's just keeping an open mind.
Well, Carton, I was brought up to be a very strong Catholic. I was brought up in the Catholic faith. I went to Catholic schools, and I still have a very strong faith today. But because of my travels through my running career and seeing the world, I've been to so many different temples throughout the length of India, so many different mosques through parts of the Arabic nations and different parts of the world. I've traveled through China, Japan. I've been through Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine. And so consequently, I keep coming back to the one thing that should be the basis of all religion, and that is, once again, humanity. And it's about caring about each other. It's about, if everything could be summed up in a single word, that word would be love. And under the guise of love, if we loved one another and we cared for one another, then we also care for their values, and we understand them. We don't always have to agree with everybody else, but we have to see things from their point of view and understand where they're coming from, and be malleable enough and flexible enough to be able to live with them, even if we disagree with them. It's like having neighbors that, you may have a very young family living next door to a very old family, and the very old family are used to doing their hedges a certain way, or having a fence, or putting out the garbage, being very regimented. And the very young family, because of just the way the world is living, working shift work or doing all sorts of different things. So the noise they're making and the life they're living is different to the people living next door. But it's about us all living together and working together and understanding that we all come from different places, and we've got to work with each other and understand each other. And when you do that, then you find the best in each other. You find the best in everybody else. And by doing that, you live a happier life. And I think the pursuit of happiness is really the fundamental reason why we're all on this planet. And the one thing that we can all preach for decades and centuries to come is the pursuit of happiness for ourselves, for our families, and for our children, and for next generations is the most important thing in the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, hearing you talk about this in a very, respectful, open-minded and sensitive way just makes me remember you're actually a mentor. So could you tell me a little bit about, the sorts of endeavors that you face as a mentor, I guess topics that come up, that sort of thing?
Well, thank you. Look, there wouldn't be a week that goes by without somebody contacting me and saying, "Hey, Pat, you've raised all this money for different charities. You've raised literally millions of dollars for different worthwhile causes and charities. How do you do it? I want to go off and I want to raise some money for a good cause, or I had a friend that's suffering from cancer, or I had something go wrong in my life. How do I deal with this? Or how can I help?" And most people find that they can get through a dark situation by actually finding a higher cause. Like that means somebody else to raise funds to change that situation. So if, for instance, if you're suffering cancer, and then the best way to help yourself and to help everybody else is to raise funds for the Cancer Council or the Cancer Foundation, so that you can rid this world of that disease and you can change people's lives. And in the process of trying to do something about it, you have a positive attitude because you've got an action moving forward. And that's the same with business. It's the same with everything in life. Many people are brought down by the problems of life, the problems of low finances, the problems of not having enough time in the day, or exams, or not feeling adequate to be able to compete at a certain level against other people that are much better singers, dancers, performers than what they are, etc., etc. But they've got to know and understand that the best way to deal with that is to try and learn to find a way to rectify that situation, to better it, to make it. And so once we have a mission in life, once we have a cause and a purpose, then all of a sudden life's not so bad. We have direction. And all the time people are looking for leadership. They're looking for leaders. And that's why I often get called by people to say people come to me with the problem, but they don't realize that they actually have the answer to the problem themselves. They just need to see it through different eyes. And so often my job as a consultant and as a mentor is to really help other people see what the issues are and then find a way of pulling a positive out of that and moving forward. And by doing that, it ends up to be a successful situation. I mean, how many people do you have you spoken to or have you met with that, become great swimmers because they were asthmatics? They were when they might have been born with asthma, and so the doctor said to their parents the best way for them to overcome is they need to have exercise, and probably the best exercise for them is to learn to swim. And half of our Olympic gold medalists have been people that have had asthma when they were young.
Oh, really?
So that's exactly the point I'm making, is often we overcome our inabilities with exuberance if we just give them the right direction.
Wow. I didn't sort of think of it that way, but I guess, obviously your work as a consultant and as a mentor would be able to give you these sorts of hindsight perspectives, which makes me wonder, obviously you give great advice and, great talks such as this, but is there ever or any sort of advice that you wish you had gotten when you were younger?
Probably the one thing that I stand by in my whole life is just never give up. It's amazing what a human being can do. We can do anything. We can achieve great goals. I've had literally millions of dollars go through one hand and out the other through different projects I've been involved with and different things that I've done. And yet when I was young, I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney. My family was very poor. We didn't have much at all. And so it's amazing how you can change your stars, you can change your fortunes if you simply believe in yourself and you never give up on what you're trying to achieve. And all these other things just happen by chance. By the same token, you need to be doing something because you love to do it. So I always say to people, tell me what your passion is, not what you want, but what you really love. Tell me about that. Tell me what it is that you would do if money wasn't the issue. If like a lot of people say, I would love, I really want to go to Japan. I want to go skiing in Japan, or I want to go to Russia and take the Trans-Siberian Railway across there. Or I really want to go for a cruise around the world, or I really want the best car money can buy, or I want this, or I want that. If that's all they want, they can easily achieve that. They just need to be focused on that, break it down into bite-sized pieces. Like, I will run an enormous distance and I will break it down. So let's say, for instance, I was going to run 100 kilometers, and this is a lesson for life, so it applies to everything. If I was going to run 100 kilometers, then I would break that down into 10-kilometer pieces. I know I can run 10 kilometers. I know I can absolutely crawl 10 kilometers if I have to. So all I have to do is worry about doing 10 kilometers. And then I look at when I want to race the 100 kilometer distance, And I look at the date that that's set for, and I look at what today's date is, and then I break down into segments how much time I have in between now and when my destiny is for that 100 kilometers. And then I just improve little increments all the way along until I get to the stage where I know that I can do that distance. So it's just about small improvements over a long period of time instead of a big improvement over a short period of time. Everybody wants to get rich, but they want to get rich tomorrow. They want to win the lottery, but they don't buy a ticket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that. Whereas if I really want $1 million, I can get $1 million if I just start with $1, and then I just work towards making that $2, and then I work towards making that $4, and I work towards, and so you just do it in small increments. But the problem is we get impatient as human beings, and we want everything to happen instantly.
Yeah, that's true. I think there's a really interesting phenomenon that's sort of, I feel like it's always been around, but it's made a special appearance on the ever-present social media for our generation, which is like the romanticization of like grind culture and like constantly trying to like push yourself to your absolute limits. And I mean, I'm all for that, but I feel like a lot of people don't realize that that can be a little bit unrealistic if you're trying to build the life that you want in like 1 week. And results aren't always going to come that quickly if it's going to be a whole lifestyle change for you. And it's okay to take time and work up to those goals, and I don't think you have to beat yourself up if you don't make enormous amounts of change in a small amount of time, because some things it's not meant to rush. You're meant to work yourself up to that point.
Yeah, it's the old 10,000 hour philosophy. If you want to become a great artist, a great piano player, a great violinist, a great painter, give it 10,000 hours. Put that amount of time into whatever it is over the course of your life, and you will be a master at that in that field. So whatever it is, you have to dedicate time to it. And this is why, the most precious thing on this planet is not money, it's not minerals, it's time. It's the one thing that from the moment we're born, we start losing. And so we have to make up our mind, if we really want to be good at something or exceptionally good at something, then we have to dedicate time to it. And a lot of us aren't prepared to dedicate time to it. But the time is the most precious asset that we possibly have. And time will enable us to be anything or do anything that we want to do if we just play it right. So once again, you give it 10,000 hours to anything and you will be a master at it.
Definitely. I remember being taught that when I was in school like a couple of years ago, but
no, it works.
you're absolutely correct. So what is next for you in this next coming year or next couple years? I mean, you're the first interview that I've done in the beginning of 2022, which is very exciting. Is there any, new projects coming up or endeavors you're taking on?
Oh, you bet. Look, as we said earlier on, I love to run, and love to use my running as a means to be able to help other people and make a difference. So I'm planning to run for the 10th of March, where I will run up and down Sydney's Centrepoint Tower, which is called Westfield Tower now. I'll run up and down that tower, and I'll try and break a record that I set 16 years ago, where I ran more than 100,000 stairs in the tower in a 24-hour period. And Triple M are going to come on board and broadcast live over the course of the 24 hours from the tower. And they are going to support this charity called Wounded Heroes, which is returned service men and women that are suffering from financial problems and mental health problems and, basically all sorts of different issues. So I promised them that I would raise money for their cause. And my goal is to get each step sponsored for just $5. So I want school children, I want adults, I want families, I want organizations, I want anybody to sponsor step for $5. And if they do that, and then if I break my record, I will run over 100,000 stairs. And not only that, but I'll raise more than $500,000 in one day. So that's the first thing I have on for the year on the 10th of March. Then a little bit later on in the year, there is the commemorative run for the to commemorate 150 years of us having a telegraph line that goes from Darwin to Adelaide. And what a lot of people don't realise is it used to take 6 months to get news from Europe to Australia because we didn't have an underwater cable and that cable wasn't connected up.
This briefly
Yeah, and
my last time.
yeah, and so now we have this cable that went from basically from Britain to Java, and then from Java across to Darwin, or from Indonesia across to Darwin, and then from Darwin right down to Adelaide, and then it expands out right across the country. So we have internet and we have all telecommunications and we have communications all because somebody forged ahead 150 years ago. And this guy by the name of Charles Todd did that, supported that, and made that happen. And so consequently, we want to commemorate 150 years of the telegraph line. So that'll happen in August. I have another run on in December, which is from Broken Hill through to Byron Bay, called 1,000 Miles to Light. And that'll be for youth mental health, that I'll do that run, and we'll have international runners for that. Plus, I plan to do a run in Thailand for the orphanages over there, to raise funds for the orphanages over there. So I'll run with some of the celebrities of Thailand and from Bangkok to Chiang Mai. And I also hope to do a run around Bangladesh as well. So it's a busy year for me. And in between all of that, I have many business ventures and many other things going on, but I'd like to keep myself busy. And like I said, the most important thing in this world is time. And if you can give time to other people and use your time to support other people, then it's a gift worth giving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it sounds like you have an extraordinarily busy, but, very cause-worthy year, that all of your projects that are coming up sound incredible. And I hope I'll be able to follow them pretty closely and, see what comes of that. But it's been incredible being able to speak to you today. Thank you so much for your, amazing insight and perspective on, all of your very impressive projects that you've had throughout your career. But yeah, it's just been wonderful.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, Carlton. And before I go, if I could just leave your audience with this one statement that I try and give to everybody that I speak to, and it's quite simply this: that there is no force on this earth and none in hell greater than our will. If you want to do anything, and I mean anything, with all your heart, you can and you will find a way. If you don't truly want to do it, you'll simply find an excuse. So my message to your audience is find out what they really want with all their heart and believe in themselves, never give up on their goal, and they will achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And that's definitely something I think I need to hear as well. Getting through year 12's got to happen one way or another. So I'll keep that in mind. But thank you so much for coming here, and hopefully I'll be able to speak with you sometime again in the future. To anyone watching, if you want to find out more about Pat's endeavors and sort of his journey that he's had, both politically and also as an ultramarathon athlete, I'll include some links down below. And yes, be sure to check them out. Thank you again for giving me your time today, and it's been wonderful speaking to you.
My pleasure.